Now I will introduce the introducer of our other Star of Ukraine award winner. Marcy Kaptur, Chuck Grassley is the most senior member of the Senate. Marcy Kaptur holds the record for the longest serving woman in the House of Representatives. Nadia and I met Marcy when she was first elected and started serving in 1983, when she testified before a hearing to have the United States recognize the Holodomor. She testified in that hearing. We met her then. We've worked with her ever since. She, in 1997, in the 105th Congress, she was a founder of the Ukraine caucus in Congress. She has served as co-chair, and I would say in many ways the driving co-chair since the 105th Congress to where we are in the 119th Congress. And she is recognized as a force for Ukraine. She's been to Ukraine many times. And she's met the leaders and people, but my favorite stories are her stories about meeting the babchkas, and their gardens growing plants. She's known for her constituent services in the 9th District of Ohio, but watching her, I think she also thinks the people of Ukraine are cherished constituents. Marcy.
Thank you. Talk about a force. Bob O'Connell, you and Nadia are a force. And we are proud to be with you. And that is absolutely one of the most delicious dinners I have ever eaten. Wouldn't you agree with me? And what a joy it is to be with you, to be here at the Swedish Embassy, and also to have listened to the words of Ukraine's new ambassador to the United States. And I'm sorry, I was going to have some jokes with Senator Grassley. You know, he comes from the kingdom over in the Senate. We who are in the House, you know, we're a little more raucous. And but he truly is a dear Senate colleague and an honest one. And I'm not sure, but I think that Mr. Howard Buffett is here, and I don't know, is that correct? And I think he's at our table, and to him and to his father and to the extraordinary value set that you hold, you keep my faith in capitalism. And I know both gentlemen will receive the award, but I don't have the responsibility for introducing you tonight or being a part of that. But I just wanted to say the best strawberries I've ever eaten were in Ukraine. The best bread I've ever eaten was in Ukraine. And so the breadbasket of Europe is under deep stress. But we know during World War II, part of its soils were removed and sent back to Germany, 12 foot deep. There are no arable soils like it in the world. The first time I saw it, because I only knew of it through what my grandmother used to say to me, I actually teared up. And it was breathtaking. And meeting the farmers of Ukraine, oh my, they work so hard. And to understand, they love their land. It belongs to them. They have worked it through tyranny. They have worked it through this terribly stressful period. And their land and what it produces is needed by the people of the world. So we're partly here to understand many reasons why this war and the free world winning it is just so important. And in my own work, I've tried to work with companies and so forth to plant seeds of hope and to help some of those babchas that I meet as I go around Ukraine. I think one experience I had was in Kyiv. I was there many years ago, and I went to the market right near where the U.S. ambassador's home is. And I went in there to do some shopping, and I don't speak Ukrainian, but I was very attracted to these different products, and one was a woman from the farm country who was standing like this all day long. And she had strings hung from her arm, and on them were the most delicious mushrooms that I'd ever seen. And I thought she could make a fortune. She could make a fortune. And I got somebody there who spoke a little English, and I tried to tell her, ma'am, if you could export these, even to Poland, next door, and I said, if you dry them and I find you a buyer in the United States, we'd have to go through all these, food and drug things. But, and she was, but here, you know what she said? She goes, come to my house. I show you, I pick with you, I give to you. The people are so generous. I was never able to go to where she picked the mushrooms in the forest. But I was at another home, and I said, this is the most delicious tea I have ever had. Where did you buy it? And the woman, through the transfer, she looked at me, she goes, I grew it. And so I took bags and I took boxes and I tried, but the sense of capitalism isn't at that level. And I'm thinking, how do we plant seeds of hope with these people who are so talented in wood carving? They love the earth, and we need more of that in this country. And they have such capacity, but it's being throttled, and that really upsets me. So I have the privilege this evening of introducing, if he's here, I'm so glad. Okay, now, don't bring him up yet. I'm going to say a lot of good things. And it is really my deep privilege to introduce you to one of the gentlemen who will be receiving your 2026 Stars of Ukraine Award. And I just want to say, and I don't say this about a lot of my colleagues, but I really mean what I'm going to say. I mean, first of all, this man is honest. Throughout his whole career. And I didn't know him well. I didn't go to school with him. I didn't know my Sir President Carter. I didn't know him when I was working for President Carter. I met him after I got elected. And he's always been a gentleman. And he truly has been dedicated to our European partnerships and to the Atlantic and NATO alliances. And I have had the rare privilege of working together alongside him for over 4 decades in the halls of the place I worship, which is the U.S. House of Representatives. And he has been a master lawmaker. He is relentless as an advocate for liberty without hesitation. And he has a passion for it and a total dedication to Ukraine. Now, as Democratic Majority Leader, the gentleman from Maryland, Steny Hoyer, just like showed up tonight. He shows up. When it's Ukraine, he's there. Always, always. And there has been no stronger leader than Congressman and Majority Leader Steny Hoyer in the U.S. House of Representatives championing our Atlantic and NATO alliances, and he has been tireless in his advocacy for liberty for Ukraine. And so whether it was his leadership of our Democratic caucus, his ability to reach across the aisle, and it's a masterful thing to watch. It really is when you see him at work. But he still hasn't been able to get the 218 signature on our discharge petition on sanctions on Russia. We have 217 signatures. And Mr. Buffett, I'm so glad you're here tonight, because you might be able to find someone on the Republican side who needs to sign in and make it 218, and we bring it to the floor within 24 hours and vote for it. Now, we have a diverse caucus on the Democratic side of the aisle, and Congressman and Majority Leader Steny Hoyer always speaks up and speaks out and helps to keep order among, 214 people, and sometimes the whole institution. You will always see him with a U.S.-Ukraine flag pin and a blue and yellow tie. I don't know if he's worn it tonight. But he speaks with passion from the floor of the House, and in fact, he asked us to buy hundreds of ties, yellow and blue ties, for one of the State of the Union addresses. And we did it, and members were scrambling for those. He's always looking for a way to speak and use the institution to promote liberty in Ukraine. So as this evening, as the U.S.-Ukraine Foundation presents him with such a distinguished award that I know he has earned, and he approaches his well-earned announced retirement, which I'm not too excited about that, I reflect upon the hard-fought victories we have all achieved together and those which remain ahead. As a champion of liberty, you couldn't have a better human being than Steny Hoyer. He stands in the thick of it. I've watched him argue passionately, including in our Appropriations Committee, sometimes pounding on the table and forcefully advocating for Ukraine in public as well as behind closed doors. He's kept people in the room on a bipartisan basis that no one else could possibly do. I'm just telling you that. He continues that today as Liberty's sons and daughters push to finally pass, as I mentioned, the sanctions bill. So tonight, as he is presented from all of us, this award of gratitude, please know that though this term is expired at the end of this year for him, and even long after, we know he will continue to be a passionate advocate for a free Europe and for the people of Ukraine in their fight for liberty on their own land. And when liberty calls, there is no question. Majority Leader Steny Hoyer of the great state of Maryland has answered that call every time. Without further ado, I call up Congressman Steny Hoyer, a treasured friend. And he doesn't live that far from the Capitol over in Maryland, so he just might want to think about what he can do with the years ahead. Congressman Hoyer, we love you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very much. How do you?
There's no step there.
Oh.
Look, I know why all of you came. I came to hear the introduction of Marcy Kaptur of me. Did we record that, hon? My wife, Dr. Kmark, is here with me, and we're so glad to be here with all of you. Madam Ambassador, I could just say I adopt the remarks of the gentle lady from Ukraine and sit down. And some people in here hope I would do that. The people who know me say that no way I'm going to do that. Marcy Kaptur is Ukraine in the Congress of the United States. Talking to Bob McConnell, whom I've known for a pretty long time, Bob. And Marcy Kaptur, of all the members, of the 535 members, is the member of the 535 of us who you know is going to be in the room for Ukraine all the time. And it was long before this war started that Marcy Kaptur was there for Ukraine. She's got courage, she's obviously articulate, and she's got passion for freedom and democracy, and particularly that in Ukraine. Mr. Buffett, I don't know you. You're lucky. Thank you, Lord. But I do know Susan. My wife, who died in 1997, Judy, was an early childhood teacher. And I've had the great opportunity with Susan of going through the Child Care Center in Omaha. What a wonderful enterprise. Reminds me of how well those children are cared for and how at risk the Ukrainian children are. So I understand you've given a couple of pennies, or maybe a few more than pennies, for this effort. One of the 45 minutes that I spent in your father's office in Omaha, in that little office that was about the size of my law office when I was practicing law many, many years ago. And he talked to me about what we ought to be doing in the Congress of the United States. Was 45 minutes of absolute joy in seeing this extraordinary father that you have the privilege of being the son of speak to me about policy in Washington and the people, the working people of America. So, although I don't know you, I'm sure you're a chip off the old block, and thank you very much for all you've done and do. I am deeply honored to receive this award from the U.S.-Ukraine Foundation. I was sworn into the United States House of Representatives on June 3rd, 1981. I embarked on my first trip to the Soviet Union 21 days later. Paul Simon, the senator from Illinois, called me up and said, I'm going to the Soviet Union. Would you go? I said, I've only been here 3 weeks. Seems to me a little bit officious to think that, okay. He said, no, fine, you can go. And you can bring Judy with you. I said, I can't afford that. I didn't know about Codels at that point in time. Excuse me. The trees are unfortunately attacking me. I don't know about the rest of you, but these trees are really doing it. My wife, Dr. Elaine Kmart. Pretty highfalutin when you have a PhD from the Brookings Institution delivering you water. Thank you very much, babe. Now I got to figure out how not to spill it. Marcy will take it. Put it on the table. We visited Bonn, Moscow, and Kiev. 1981 was the first time that I had the opportunity to go to Kiev. I brought with me, Howard, some cigarettes, some candy, and some other stuff that the Jewish community had given me to give to a mother who had a child, he was probably in his 20s, in jail in Kiev. And that, of course, was going to be used to trade with the guards for privileges that he might receive. Okay? And I remember going, I had to go alone because the embassy said, no, we can't do that. So I went alone. I was on their subway, their metro. I kept looking around to see if I was being followed. It was a little scary event because, of course, it was communist control at that point in time. So that was my first visit. And the KGB guide that we had on the bus said, as we drove through Kiev, do you know, because we commented on the trees in Kiev, do you know what the most treed community in America is? And we said, no. She said, you ought to know, because it's Washington, D.C. I believe that the West might make the difference in whether Ukraine achieved the dream that I knew they had of sovereignty. I have, since that time, supported Ukraine ever since. When I joined the Helsinki Commission in 1985, the Soviet satellite republics received relatively little attention from the Washington foreign policy establishment, which primarily focused on Russia itself. We sought to bring attention to the Ukrainians' plight. A guy named Orest Deshek. It's longer than that, but that's how I know him. Some of you may know Orest. And he and I traveled frequently to Europe and behind the Iron Curtain and to Moscow. We cast a light on the Soviet oppression against the Ukrainian Catholic Church, at the time the largest banned religious denomination in the world. We pushed for the release of Ukrainian Helsinki monitors who faced the harshest repression of any of the Helsinki chapters. I remember traveling to Moscow in 1987 with the Helsinki Commission and with Speaker Wright. And we met with Gorbachev in Moscow, and he talked about glasnost, about the Soviet Union's new openness, transparency, and tolerance. After that meeting, we then went again to Kiev. And in Kiev, we met with, of course, one of the members of the Politburo at that point in time. I forget whether he was the dictator of Ukraine. That was not his formal title, I'm sure. But we also met with dissidents from across the Soviet Empire, including Ukraine. Fresh out of the Gulag, hands still calloused from years of forced labor, they told us a different story. One about how the Soviet regime terrorized them, tortured them, jailed them, and too many instances killed them. This is 1987. Their only crime? Daring to see the world as it could be, one defined by human rights, by freedom, by democracy, and asking, why not? You know, Bobby Kennedy, when he ran for president, used that line. Some men see things as they are and ask why. I see things as they are and say, why not? Ukrainians asked the question in 1987. They asked when they gained their independence in 1991. They asked it clad in orange in 2004. And in 1994, they gave the Soviets what they wanted. You talked about the Budapest. And they promised in return for the nuclear material that they would honor the borders of Ukraine. They asked it when they were gunned down in the Maidan to secure their democracy in 2014. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that 2014 and the theft of Crimea was the mother of this war we confront today. The tepid reaction of the West. Is that the ambassador? She's always going to be my ambassador. With all due respect, Ambassador, she's going to be my. Oksana, good to see you. They continue to ask that question. Why not? Why should Ukraine not be a democratic and sovereign and free? And Russia promised that would be the case. They lied. For decades, a bipartisan majority in the United States joined them in asking that question. Throughout my 45 years in Congress, when I visited Ukraine, when I met Ukrainian dissidents, when I passed legislation supporting Ukraine, I did so alongside Republicans. It was a bipartisan effort, a bipartisan commitment. Tonight, I received the same award that George H.W. Bush received. I sponsored the Americans with Disabilities Act back in 1990. And George H.W. Bush signed that act. It was a bipartisan commitment to human rights and those with disabilities. Mitch McConnell, who stands as strong as anybody in the Congress of the United States for the NATO alliance and for the strength of the West and for the defense of democracy and freedom. Rob Portman from Ohio, another Republican. He's received this award, correctly so. We represent two parties, but we have spoken with one voice, a voice for Ukraine, for America, for the free world, for international law, for right. Marcy said, I wear this flag every day. I didn't want you to think I just wore it today in appreciation of this award. I wear it every day because I'm old enough. I'm retiring, as you know. People congratulate me I'm retiring, and some say, why are you retiring? Well, I'll be 87 in June. I didn't think it was a premature retirement. but I'm not interested in leaving, really, but I'm just not sure at 88 and 89 I can do the job. And I owed it to my constituents, therefore, to step aside. But I'm sad that I'm stepping aside because the country needs people who are committed to standing up for freedom, for right, for democracy. I believe that we have had a Chamberlain or Churchill time in our country. And we are either going to stand up and fight for what's right, we're going to stand up and fight for freedom and international law, or we're going to lose. Not Ukraine's just going to lose, we're going to lose. The West is going to lose. The values that we share and are committed to will lose. Sadly, and I know this is not a partisan event, but sadly in the White House and in Congress, some are trying to silence the voices of those who are saying we need to act. They parrot Vladimir Putin's lie that somehow Ukraine, the victim of this war, somehow started it. That, of course, as everybody in this room knows and the world knows, is baloney. I clean that up. But ladies and gentlemen, there is still a consensus in the Congress of the United States in support of Ukraine. Since the Russian invasion in 2022, the House has had at least 12 votes in support of Ukraine. An average of 80% of the members of the House of Representatives have voted on that bill every time it's been on the floor. Over 300 votes every time it's been on the floor. Greg Meeks, the former chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee and now the ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee in the House of Representatives, and I have a bill. It's called the Ukraine Support Act. Now, I've heard a number of you talk about sanctions. I'm for sanctions. But the sanctions bill in the United States Senate doesn't say a word about Ukraine. Hear me. Read it. It says we want to sanction Russia. I want to sanction Russia. But I also want to send a message to every Ukrainian. We are for you. We will stick by you. So I want you to help me. The Ukraine Support Act. We have approximately 55. We could get more. 214 Democrats. That's everybody we have. Everybody we have has signed a discharge petition. We'll say, bring the Ukraine Support Act to the floor. Bring a bill that says we support Ukraine. We support NATO. We oppose Russia. And yes, it includes sanctions. But it does much more than that. It says to the Ukrainian people, we have been with you, we're with you now, and we will be with you in the future. We need one Republican. Brian Fitzpatrick, call him up and thank him. Don Bacon in Nebraska, call him up and thank him. They're the two Republicans. Now remember, over 100 Republicans every time, and a majority of Republicans, 11 out of the 12 times, voted to support Ukraine. I have been working, Greg Meeks has been working, Marcy Kaptur has been working, the caucus that she leads has been working to try to get one more signature. And that bill will come to the floor. Because those are the rules. The Speaker can't stop it. The President can't stop it. It will come to the floor with one more Republican. That's your homework. You want to do something? You can give money. That's great. I urge you to buy all the auction items there are at double, the third, or 4 times the price. But what I urge you to do, if you know a Republican in the House of Representatives, call them up. Tell them how critically important it is to the Ukrainian people to have the Congress stand up and say, we're for you. as they're huddled in cold trenches, heroically stopping the Russian onslaught. Just one more Republican. And there are a lot of Republicans who are for Ukraine and say they are and talk about it. And I've talked to them. And I've said it's time to stand up for Ukraine. And I want to congratulate Putin for getting Finland and Sweden on board. My father was born in Copenhagen, so I'm a Scandinavian. I'm a Viking. And I am so glad to see the Scandinavian countries one voice. One voice. Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and Finland. And how that strengthened NATO. But it is America's voice that needs to be heard. Yes, we've given support. The ambassador was tenacious in getting us to that objective. Joe Biden didn't do as much as I would like, but he did a lot. One more person to speak up for Ukraine. One more person to show a modicum of courage that Ukrainians are showing every day. One more person to ask why not. That heartfelt question deserves more than heartless answers of appeasement, apathy, and isolationism. Those are tough words, I understand that. But these are tough times. And we ought not to, in any way, temporize our language when dealing with an aggressor who wants to not only take Ukraine, but all of that which they had and more. In my final years in Congress, I stand with a besieged Ukraine, but a Ukraine that is an example to the whole world of the kind of courage Americans showed in 1776 when they said, we want to tell the whole world that we are going to stand for ourselves and for freedom, for liberty, for justice, for one nation under God, indivisible. I want to thank my Ukrainian friends in America who have added so much to our country. But as I said, I want to give you homework. You go home tonight. You think of who you know. You're all very active. You're all very knowledgeable. And I want you to get on the phone. You know how that guy got up and said, I want you to go to the phone. I want you to stand up in that movie. That's what I want you to do. John Lewis, one of my best friends, he died a little bit ago. He said, if you see something that's not right, that's not fair, that's not just, you need to stand up. You need to speak up. You need to speak out. You need to get in trouble, good trouble. I want you to stand up, not worrying about the political ramifications of your standing up with somebody. Stand up because it's the right thing to do. Stand up because it'll make a difference. Stand up because this is America's fight too. God bless you and Godspeed.
I have to admit, we had one failure in this dinner. The awards didn't make it. Oh. So I'm going to come visit you. But for the picture, Elena said this rooster, I can't remember the name of the town, but the bombing that took place. Building was gone. This rooster that was on a ledge.
There's a picture.
There's the picture. It survived. It was at the auction, but we're going to hold it for this picture.